I've made thousands of dollars installing shiplap boards. Everybody seems to want it. In this video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know. How to cut around corners, how to cut around outlets, everything to make your DIY project look like it was done by a professional. All right, when we're installing shiplap, it's important to first make sure you have the right tools. Having the right tools is going to make this job way easier. If you don't have the right tools, you're going to go from like a one day, possibly just an afternoon project, to like several days long. So go ahead and invest in the right tools. I'm going to have links to all those down in the description below so you don't have to go searching for them. But I'm telling you, this is going to make your life a lot easier. The number one tool you want to have is a nail gun. I like the 18 gauge brad nailer. It's going to need 18 gauge brad nails, these things right here. And you can just shoot those nails right into your wall and get that thing attached, no problem. Without this, you're going to have to either nail in finishing nails yourself. Trust me, it's just a lot easier to have the brad nailer. Now, personally, I like to do the battery powered one. It's a lot more convenient, easier to move things around, a lot less noisy. You don't need the air compressor, but you can get an air powered one. Those work just as good. It's just a little bit more cumbersome to get it all put together. So a brad nail, you want to have that. Number two, a level. You got to have a level, okay? If you don't check for level periodically, what'll happen is one board maybe wasn't perfectly straight, maybe just a little bit off, and now all of a sudden you have that little gap over here. It gets bigger and bigger, and before you know it, your boards look like they're like this, okay? Check for level. If you don't check for level, it compounds as you go higher, so you got to do it often. Check for level often. The other thing you're going to need is a miter saw. Can this be done without a miter saw? Yes. Is it a lot easier to do it with a miter saw? Absolutely yes. Get yourself a miter saw so you can cut those 45s on the corners, so you can cut perfect 90s when you need to cut in between two walls, or if you need to do a splice joint, which we're going to talk about, that is something that you've got to have that miter saw for, because you need it to be perfect for those things to line up just right. Skirt joints or splice joints, whatever you want to call them, are when your board is not long enough to reach across the entire wall, but you want to make it look like it's one board. You're going to do a skirt joint right over a stud so that it'll stay nice and smooth. We're going to go over that in detail at the end, so make sure you stick around. All right. The other thing you will probably want is a jigsaw. It's great when it comes to cutting around those outlets. You could also use an oscillating tool. Either one works. I like the jigsaw. It's a little bit faster, and it doesn't have to be quite as perfect because the faceplate will cover most of the edges. Those are the tools you're going to need. A hammer and, tape measure. Obviously, you got to have that. Those are things that you're going to want, but it's a pretty basic thing. It's stuff that if you do any type of work around the house, you probably have that kind of stuff. This may be the only purchase you need to make, but hey, you can convince your wife or your husband, hey, this thing's worth it. You can use it not only for shiplap, but for crown molding, baseboards, holding things together. Spend the money on the nail gun, okay? Tell them it's an investment. It's worth it, right? All right, so we're going to get into it. When we're installing, a common misconception is that your floors or the bottom that you're putting it all on, it's not always flat, okay? People think it is because their floor looks flat, right? But oftentimes that bottom row gets placed on the floor, and then before you know it, you have problems moving forward because it wasn't flat, and then that next board isn't flat, and the board after that is just a little bit more. And like I said before, it goes from being a small problem to a big problem the higher up you go. So check for level. There's two options when it comes to that bottom board. Number one, you put the baseboard back on top, and so you can just space it out to wherever you want it. It doesn't have to be all the way on the ground. Or number two, you run that piece all the way to the ground. If it's tight enough, if your floor is flat enough, you could just caulk it to the ground. If your floor has a lot of waves in it, which again, that sometimes happens, you'll be surprised when you put a level on your floor how unflat your floor is. You can do two things there. Number one, make it level, and whatever gaps you have, you put a piece of quarter round to cover the bottom. Or number two, you scribe it, meaning you take your pencil, you run it along the floor so that you're cutting the pieces of the shiplap to sit flat on that floor. So lots of options. I know I just threw a lot at you there, but that first piece is very important because, like I said, you mess that piece up, it's going to show when you get way up here. Okay, you put it there, you get your level on it, and make sure it's level. Adjust as needed. Boom, and then you shoot it in. Right. If you want a list of all this, if you want, I have an article and I'll have a free PDF that you can get. If you go over to my website, there'll be a link down in the description below. Just like a checklist, like how am I supposed to do? Am I doing this right? Read that little checklist and you'll be good to go. Now that we've got our pieces mitered, our first thing we're going to do is make sure we get this corner nice and tight, right? So we put our pieces together, make sure we have that nice joint. If you have some CA glue, which is instant adhesive, it works great here. You can temporarily put those. I just recently ran out, don't have any, but all it is little glue on there, little activator on the other side. You put them together and it sticks pretty nicely. A lot of trim carpenters use that stuff. I love it. I love it so much that I ran out of it. So we're gonna load our nail gun. The wrong size nails out. I like to use 2-inch nails when I'm doing this because you're running through drywall typically. All right, so another thing to think about here is most of the time, if you're doing this at home on your own house, if you're not building a new wall, then you're probably putting this right over drywall, which is perfectly fine. You can do that. But what you're going to want to do is get a stud finder and mark all your studs, because this stuff, if you're just shooting through the shiplap into drywall and you're not hitting anything on the other side, it's really not going to hold really well. It'll hold temporarily. It's not going to fall off the wall right away, but over time it's going to move a little bit. It gets bumped, it gets knocked. Drywall is just paper and basically dust in between, right? So you want to make sure you're hitting studs. If you're building a new wall, let's say you're doing like a little fireplace, I do a lot of those. You're reframing, you're putting new framing in. It's very simple. That's all you have, like this. You're not going to shoot it in between, right? That wouldn't make any sense. You're not shooting into anything. And that's essentially what you're doing when you're shooting into just drywall. Is you're just shooting into this paper, and you have nothing to really hold it all together, right? So hit your studs, each one, and then again, make sure you shoot into the bottom part of the shiplap. At least you don't have to do it on every stud. You should hit the top on every stud, but the bottom you can skip every other stud. But do when you're going up the line, so pick a stud, and that's the one you're going to hit the bottom on every time, because then it's easy to make sure you fill those holes later, right? If you're just skipping around and hitting it randomly, you may miss a hole, and then that's kind of annoying because then it pops up after you've painted, right? And that's another thing. Put at least one coat of paint on here first. Unless you're doing white. If you're going to do white, you can get away with it. It'll come primed. Some of these come pre-painted. But getting in here after it's been painted is a very difficult job, and it's not a lot of fun. So I like to put one coat of paint on there first, put everything on the wall, sand it smooth, and then put another coat of paint on there. And that's because this spot in here, it's just a lot easier for that to be done first, right? So that's your first layer, right? You're checking for level, making sure that thing is sitting just right. You've mitered your corners. You've got glue on it so that that miter is not going to split down the road. Put glue on your miters. All you're going to do next, obviously, is just make sure you're lined up, and then you can keep on firing. Hit that stud. See, that's going to keep it from sticking out. Sometimes you'll notice that it wants to fly out on the bottom part. By shooting a nail through it, you're going to keep it down there. All right, so I'm going to show you how I turn this board and make it cut. Bam, it's cut, right? Jigsaw does all that work. Here's this clip right there. Bam. Then you go to install that. Make sure you're lined up. You can have a little bit of give there, right? Your faceplate is going to cover it. If your faceplate doesn't, go back to Lowe's or Home Depot. They make jumbo size. That'll cover it up, right? But you want to give about 1/8 of an inch, give or take, right? Because you're going to add a box extender here later, and that's going to allow you to kind of basically protect the wires in between here by moving the box out. It's just a little plastic thing that goes behind the outlet, clips right on there. Faceplate will cover it all up, right? So we cut around the bottom of the outlet, nail her all in. And then to get your measurement, you're going to measure from this part here to the top of the outlet. You want to go right above that screw. Mine is 1.25 inches. And then when you measure from the bottom of this, you are measuring from here, from where it is touching the next piece. Don't measure from up here. Measure from here down. In my case, the 1.25 inches. That's where I make my mark, and that's where I got that measurement right there to make that cut. Right? If you measure from this, you're going to be short. Measure from the other piece. Then all you got to do is line that up. And that's how you cut around an outlet, right? That's probably going to be the most common thing you run across when you're doing your shiplap is you're going to run into an outlet. There's an outlet on almost every wall. And so at some point you're going to run across that, okay? Cutting around that is pretty simple as long as you know where you're taking your measurements from, marking it, and then again, checking for level as you go up to make sure that you're not cutting it across. 1/8 of an inch is pretty much where you want to be. I wouldn't try to go any bigger than that. Try to get it snug, but not too snug, right? You want to be able to get that outlet extender in there and make sure that it sits just right and the faceplate will cover it. If you mess up, like I said, jumbo faceplates, that's a thing. Go get one, get the indestructible one so you can screw it on there and not have to worry about snapping it, okay? Next thing, last thing we're going to do, I told you about this skirt joint thing. Let's say you're doing a 16-foot wall, a 20-foot wall. Most of these shiplap boards are going to come in either 8 or 12 feet. So you're going to have to do some sort of joint because most people don't want to see that seam, right? They want it to make it look like it's a full 20-foot board. Well, here's how you do that. It's called a skirt joint. Skirt joint is basically we're going to take our boards and we're going to put a 22.5-degree miter on the end. And you want to do that for both pieces, right? So this is our piece that's going all the way to the end, right? And then I want that joint to land on a stud. So you may have to cut it a little bit shorter, or you may have to, whatever you need to do to make sure that that joint's going to land on a stud so that it can look nice, right? I'm going to go ahead and put this one in, right? So that one's sitting on there. Then we're going to come back with this piece. I've added a little bit of caulk on there because that way when I push it in there, the glue and the caulk will hold it all together, and that's going to give us a nice tight seam there, and anything that pushes out I can then smooth out and it'll be clean, right? Caulk is already in there on the joint. It's going to help adhere the pieces together, but it's also going to squeeze out and I can go ahead and get that whole seam covered, right? So then we get it as tight as we can. Slide to this side. just like that. You sand that piece smooth and you're good to go, right? When you're done, you're going to have some nail holes to fill. This is stuff I like to use. It's a spackling. It goes on pink. It dries white. There's some other stuff. I've used some other things as well. JB Weld has more of a putty, which that stuff's good, but you don't have a whole lot of working time with it, right? I like to use that for my finer pieces, right, that are going to get a lot more traffic, that need to be a little bit more durable. This stuff works just fine for stuff that's more for show, right? People aren't going to be messing with this as much as they would like a cabinet door, okay? So kind of knowing what filler you're going to use for what thing is very helpful. So this stuff is pretty simple. Pop it open. You can use a little spatula, or you can just use your finger. I use my finger most of the time. And just go hit all those holes. Rub it in. Leave it a little high. Okay, you want to make sure that because when it dries, it says it doesn't shrink, but let's be honest, it shrinks a little bit. You want to make sure you get good coverage. Anywhere there was a joint or a hole, rub this stuff in. And then when it dries white, you're going to come back with some sandpaper, some high grit. 220 is good. If you got even higher than that, 320, you can do that as well. And just sand it. Get all that excess off there. Come back, paint the thing. Usually one more coat is good. Sometimes you need two. But if you don't clean this stuff off, it'll show through the paint, right? So you got to sand it, wipe off all that dust, put on a nice coat of paint, and I'm telling you, it's going to look like a pro came in here and did that, and you're going to do it for half the cost, because all this stuff that I just showed you, that costs a lot of money for a pro to come in and do that, and it's going to be done right. But if you don't want to do it all, you're going to pay for it. That's pretty much everything you need to know, right? That's how you do shiplap. That's how I make thousands of dollars just going in and helping people add a little bit of flair to their house, little customization. Shiplap is a great little feature to give you texture. It gets you out of that boring drywall look. And this is a project that you can do. If you've got the right tools, you can knock it out in a weekend. If you enjoyed this, make sure you hit that like and subscribe, share it with a friend, tell your wife, hey, look, I can do this. Go get those tools, right? Knock it out. Thanks for watching. We'll catch you on the next one.